All right. Welcome everyone. This is the Militarized Equipment Ad Hoc. It's September 19th, 2022, 6 p.m. And today we are going to take up the first look of a draft on flashbangs, diversionary devices by Lieutenant Thomason, then turn to robots, then unmanned aerial surveillance, and then finally LRAD. Lieutenant Thomason, can you get us started? Do you have control?
Sure. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yep. You guys got it? Okay. So this is going to be the first look at Train Bolton on noise flash diversion devices, so NFDDs. And this is a first Train Bolton. We've never had a policy or Train Bolton on flash devices, so this is the first one going through. So as we start off on the purpose, it's going to be the purpose is Train Bolton to establish guidelines for deployment and use for NFDDs, sometimes referred to as flashbangs. This goes over Oakland Police Department. Only trained personnel are authorized to use NFDDs. And as we keep on going down, I did add this next paragraph. I copied it from DQ and one of his policies about safeguarding and respecting the privacy. Well, we need to get rid of privacy. It's committed to safeguarding, and I'm going to reword this because I basically wanted to say that we're going to protect human life and the safety of people is our priority. So I'll reword that section. As we go into overview, when these devices are tools such as in NFDDs, I'm starting to pick some stuff up, are used within the scope of training and policy, they can provide a tactical advantage and furtherance of this goal. Reasonable such devices such provide distracting and visual, auditory, and equilibrium systems of the subject. So these devices are used for a tactical advantage on subjects or when entering dynamic places. They're supposed to be used for loud noises and light to overstimulate the subject. Training, so only trained personnel who have successfully completed department approved training can use these. And this training includes the OPD SWAT school, and they must complete and pass. It's not just complete. We've had people that just completed the SWAT school. You have to complete and pass the OPD SWAT school prior to being authorized to carry these devices. Training such as are conducted by certified instructors, including safe handling of the devices, also how to carry and transport. As we go down, there is a recertification that's conducted every year for this. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm wondering about how much time the initial versus the retraining certifications are.
Well, the recertification is done every year. The initial, it just depends when they attend the SWAT school.
Sorry, I mean like how many hours it takes for an officer to go through.
Oh, no, that's a good question. I don't know. I'll try to find out that. So you want the hours of school or just the recert?
Both, just so we kind of have a sense for what the initial and recurring costs are.
Okay. And I think I get down to it in the impact report. I got to look at it though. So authorization for use, only the Oakland Police Department trained personnel are authorized to use these devices in the scope of this Training Bulletin, except when extreme emergencies, life-threatening situations, the noise flash diversionary devices shall not be transported in the field without prior authorization by an incident commander or on-seat supervisor. And then as we get down to deployment, absent exigent circumstances or life-saving incidents, officers should consider and gather as much intelligence as possible to include the presence of young children, elderly, flammable materials, potential drug lab, or potential hazards. Devices shall not be deployed by trained officers who have completed the necessary, should only be deployed by trained officers who have completed the necessary training. Officers shall visually clear an area of potential hazards prior to deploying the devices due to the potential fire hazard. Officers should consider the availability of fire extinguisher prior to deploying the device, and if feasible, authorize proper protective gear such as eye and ear protection, as well as flame-resistant gloves. Officers should consider staging the Oakland Fire Department due to potential fire hazards. And then we get it for justification of use. And then it's kind of similar to the other lists. We got barricaded subject or hostage situation, high risk warrant service, discouraging dangerous animals from attacking, circumstances when distraction of a violent person and those under the influence of alcohol or drugs is believed necessary to facilitate apprehension. Situation wherein the incident commander or on-scene supervisor deems their use necessary for safely resolve the incident, active shooter incidents, and the need to regain tactical advantage to gain compliance and potential dangerous situation.
Lieutenant Thomason, Commissioner Jackson-Castine has their hand up.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Just one quick question. Are there any limitations in deploying it in smaller or confined spaces?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that. I don't think so, no.
Okay. So like, I'm just thinking of like maybe a scenario versus like, you know, maybe deploying it in a small apartment or something like that versus a larger space, and if there are any implications given like the square footage of the deployment area.
Go ahead, Lieutenant Trivia.
Hi, thanks. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I know as part of the training, there needs to be a visual assessment of the area before it's deployed. So it's going to be case by case dependent, right? So operators going to need to look and see where it's going to be deployed to ensure that it's not directly at somebody and it's not near something that's going to, you know, potentially cause like a fire or other hazard. So there isn't like a dimension of area, but just that it has to be assessed by the operator prior to deployment.
Okay, would you want to include that like assessment criteria in here? If there's something in the training already provides that we could duplicate?
Yes, I thought I had a visual assessment in here, but yeah, I'll make sure I go into it a little bit more in detail. Just what Trivia said.
Thank
I'm
you.
just gonna find it. Jennifer, did you have a question?
I did. And I like Commissioner Jackson-Castaing's suggestion. I'm wondering if prior to use or one of the authorizations for use is a visual inspection for fire hazards or contact or proximity to another person. If it would be useful to say what takes precedence, like if the person who has the flashbang sees a child and the incident commander says, no, you have to throw it in right now, like what happens in that situation? And I don't mean in this particular situation, I mean, what's the order of precedence in terms of whether that use becomes authorized or not authorized?
And I think every situation is different, especially depending on what the crime is and what we're trying to take into custody. But I know, like being on the last like 6 operations with the SWAT team, they do so much intelligence gathering beforehand and surveillance. If there's a potential of anybody being in the house, like you know, kids or any adults that are not related to the crime, then they're not going to throw the flashbang.
Yeah, maybe we can include that then of if that it's not authorized for use full stop under it when there's a risk of fire or of causing harm to someone.
Yeah, let me look at it. I just don't want to put a hard, like it's not authorized, because it obviously it depends on what's going on. If we have an active shooter inside the house and they're shooting people, then we're going to use it better. There's people in there or not.
Yeah, I mean, we have
Yeah.
the you've got the exigent circumstances. I'm just thinking about outside of that.
Okay. Let me look.
Yeah, I mean, I think perhaps a good way to have that strength but allow for flexibility or discretion is, here it says you should consider these things. Whereas if you were to phrase it such as, these factors should lead you or may lead you to decide to not use the flashbangs, please think about them before you do so.
Be considered. Okay. And then you guys want what were those factors again? Just the age of people, age of,
I think a lot
or
of the
just all of
factors
them?
that you just have here
Yeah.
are all factors that would make someone or
Okay.
give someone a lot of pause to using them.
Fire
And
hazard.
as well as Commissioner Jackson Castain's small confined spaces, which kind of gets to the flammability portion, but I think also increases the possibility, the impact of the very large noise and the light.
Yeah. Okay.
I would advocate for going a little bit stronger than that. Of if in the training, what you say is there must be a visual inspection, and this should not be used if there is the danger of fire or of coming in contact or proximity to a person. Then go ahead and spell that out. Of that means that use is not authorized. If you wanted to coach it in, to put your exigent circumstances someplace close to that, that might address some of the concerns you have about what if there is something that we're not thinking about that could make that different. But I do want to encourage the department to think about if you're training for let's not use it in these situations, then having that written guide of and reminder of how the department wants to approach the situation would be supportive.
I agree that that language should be strengthened. It should be. I hear what you're saying around not wanting to sort of make it too rigid, and there is exigency to be considered. But I do think that piece that you're highlighting right now could definitely be strengthened in that it says something more along the lines like in that following sentence where it says devices shall only be deployed blah blah blah. Before that, devices should not be deployed if unless the deployment of those devices should be avoided if any of these circumstances exist, barring extreme risk to whatever and other exigencies or something like that. I just think it needs to be more sort of assertive language that says like we're not just saying we're considering these things, but we're saying you should think of these things as sort of disallowing that unless there is something that counters that in a very sort of distinct way. That would be my preference.
Okay.
I think you have in the next section the prohibited use, and it talks about explicitly making sure it's thrown at a safe distance from persons. So I think we might need to perhaps in just structuring the document, maybe consider like these are the considerations under the section you currently have versus like prohibited use, so that it's clear that under deployment we've got these considerations, but there's actual prohibited use that's spelled out in the next section.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll improve this deployment part, and
yeah,
and especially when considering factors like officers should consider the following factors, and when considering to use this device, and then I'll list the factors. So
right, but those considerations are not circumstances under which it would be prohibiting the use of them as well.
So I then I don't understand.
Oh, no, I think I'm just agreeing with what you're saying.
Okay, okay, okay. Any issues or questions about this, the justification for use? Anybody want to add to it?
Can I ask? I saw training and I see these situations. These seem to be situations where a particular unit or team would be called out. Tactical or SWAT. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Should we just say that? I mean, is
Uh,
there any reason why anybody else besides someone who's on the who's assigned to a tactical team and conducting one of the operations, or on the SWAT team and on a call out should be using a flashbang?
I can't think of any. And that's only in the training section. That's the only people are trained to carry them, or people that have completed the SWAT school.
I think because it's attending and passing the OPD SWAT school is not necessarily the same as being on the tactical team in a deployment, or on the SWAT team and in a deployment. Right. And so being especially clear about that, I can think of a situation where random operation, officers on standby, something happens, flashbang for whatever reason is within arm's reach of an officer who may have gone through the SWAT school and they decide to use it. Do we want that? I know that sounds crazy,
No,
right? But
yeah.
anyways, Lieutenant Turner.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. Yes, it is only members of the current team who are even issued this, and I think this is something we'll get into a little later in terms of how they're issued, or who has access to them. But there is, especially since we are a part-time team, I can, and I think maybe Jeff, we can steal a little language from the chemical agents training bulletin. In terms of, there are very slight, for the most part, these are only used during operations where the team is called out itself, but there may be times, especially so the team leaders, for instance, have their gear with, and it's possible they may have their flashbangs, if they have their gear in their vehicle with them. And then I've seen not here, but in other agencies where it has happened, and it's been like active shooter or something like that, where people are sort of converging on the scene. The tactical team members get in and do something right then without the team necessarily being on tap. But I do think we have some language in the chemical agents TB that we can use. Yeah.
Jennifer.
Looking for some context on numbers. Can you remind me how many officers are in the SWAT or tactical teams, and how many have gone through this training?
Is Lieutenant Fabel on? I think he's in charge of the team. I think it's around 20, 28, but that'd be a guess right now.
Yeah, I think it's authorized 24 and 5, but currently there's 3 vacancies.
Okay, and no one outside of this have gone through the training?
The only people that have gone through maybe or got promoted to lieutenant or captain or assistant chief.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So, all right, moving back down to prohibited use, and this was the prohibited use was taken from our training bulletin 3G. It can't be used against crowds or person where it might explode next to the person's head. I can expand on this, and I did copy in 13.652 and talk about, don't use it against people that, the curfew violations, verbal threat, or just non-compliance of law enforcement directives. Then keep on going down, post-deployment considerations. So officers got to document, if they do use this device, they have to document the damage sustained during the deployment, and any medical attention was needed. They also have to write down the serial number for the device used. and complete the proper police report. The incident commander shall complete an after-action report documenting the use of the diversion device, and the special operations section shall maintain the master log for all diversion devices in the inventory and shall make necessary reporting regarding the use and the storage of the devices. And we get into that a little bit down below. So inspection and storage, the special operations section commander is responsible for ensuring that all the devices are inspected annually. This inspection will ensure the department's devices are properly stored and in good condition. Expired devices that beyond their recommended lifetime shall be designated for use in training only. And then we keep on going. It has to be in a cool, dry spot. And then just trying to think. Devices should be carried securely in a pouch or carrier with a strap or flap. Devices shall not be carried on the exterior of the member's equipment by a safety lever. Then loans of the departmental owned equipment to other agencies must be pre-approved by the chief of police or his or her designee. Any questions as I keep on going down? And then this is for the ATF. The diversion devices are required by serial number with alcohol, beverage, and tobacco, ATF, and firearms. Typically, the police department's purchase of new devices is reported directly by case lot serial number to the ATF by device manufacturer via ATF Form 5. And then this National Firearms Act requires police departments to notify ATF upon the use and expenditure of devices. The Special Operations Section Commander shall be responsible for submitting the written notification to ATF when all devices listed on the single ATF Form 5 have been used or expended. And here's the address and phone number for ATF. Any questions? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Barricaded subject, we've seen this come up in a couple of policies. I'm wondering, is that defined in another policy or TB?
Joe?
Yes, TB3, Roman numeral 3-P like Paul is the barricaded subject policy.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the policy?
Does yours continue? The end of the one that was sent has the inquiry and complaint process, but I didn't quite see it as you were scrolling through.
Yeah, I didn't. I added it to that. I need to add it to this.
Okay.
I'll write it. I had it on yours, and then I got confused with a couple different drafts here. So I'll add the complaint process. All right, I think I'm going to move to the impact report.
That sounds good.
Sorry, while you're pulling that up, Joe, was that 3P? I see P01, P03, and P04.
Yep, I was just going to raise my hand actually, because and this may be something the assistant chief can talk about, but that policy, I checked our public documents, not a public one. So that is, the training bulletin is titled Barricaded Subjects Incidents, Hostage Negotiation, and High Risk Arrest Warrants. So I think probably for many reasons, but mainly around our hostage negotiation policy and procedures, that document is not a public document.
Is it possible to get just a definition of what a barricaded subject is? Like that's all I care about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let me pull that out and send it in the email.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so we're here about the impact report for flashbangs. I will add whatever we name it or title it. It doesn't have a number yet. So once I get a number, I'll make sure I add the new number to to one of the policies here. So it'll be train, bolt, and whatever. So this is the description. It's a hand-thrown light sound device. This is the flashbang that we use. It's Combined Tactical Systems. It's the CTS 7290M. It has a expected life span of approximately 5 years. We do have 54 in inventory right now. And then we go into the cost. Cost is about $40 per unit. And if you times 40 times 54, which I know Jennifer's doing right now, it's 2,160. So, and then as we keep on going down, it's anticipated cost for each of the proposed uses. It's hard for us to estimate that, how much, goes into, and it's kind of like with the assault weapons and other devices that we have, especially trying to track each officer and how much they spend on using and training and going out to these operations. It's there's just no way for our setup here in the city of Oakland to track that and get an exact number. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Do you think it would be helpful to put in that it's $40 a unit and just put it, I don't know if that would be like too obvious.
$40 a unit?
Well, it's a anticipated cost. If you use it, you can't reuse it, right? And
oh, so put in here, okay, I get it.
yeah, I don't know if
can
that's
do that.
too obvious to include, but thought that might help.
Okay.
Does the department know or have some number as about how many average number of flashbangs used per operation?
No, and I went back and actually looked at the number since we started tracking in July. We started tracking all our military use July 1st, and we have not used it since July 1st. And since I was in charge of the SWAT team prior to July 9th for about a year, and we didn't use any. So. Well, I don't want to say we didn't use any. We didn't use any out in the field. Maybe for training, we did.
Commissioner Jackson Castaigne.
Yes, that was actually my question too, but also, are there any implications for like not using them over a period of time? Like, does that have any impact on like the integrity of it? Like, does it erode over time? I don't know, because I just don't know the mechanics of it, but like, do they become less viable the longer?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I know Adam Berrigan's on if he knows the answer to that, but that's why we have it in the policy. If it goes over the life expense, what the 5 years is, that we just use them for training. We don't use them out in the field.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then, so talking about estimated anticipated cost for potential adverse impacts, there's no way to, for us to get the, cost of injuries or cost of any unforeseeable incidents that take place. I will be documenting down below an incident that did take place in 2008 with the city of Oakland. So, but it's hard for us to find out what the recovery from injuries, trauma related to those incidents, and the cost of that. So we talk about unintentional misuses. We talk about failures of equipment and potential negative impacts, including the residents and buildings catching on fire. Unintended persons need medical attention, emotional trauma. And then we keep on going down to estimated anticipated ongoing costs. We don't know what the cost is per year. Go ahead, Jennifer.
This is super small. Where you said unintended persons might have injury, could that get changed to affected persons could have injury?
Where's that at?
It's on that page, right there someplace. I'll go down 2 paragraphs. Potential negative impacts include residents or buildings catching on fire. Yeah, and if that could be affected persons. or impacted persons, maybe?
Unintended impacted persons?
Well, I was thinking, whether
Or
it's
affected.
intended or not, it's still an impacted person.
Okay,
So I was suggesting dropping unintended.
okay, that's fine. Okay, we talked about the tactical team. It is a 3-week school, 120 hours. Usually, typically, there's 5 to 10 candidates that go through. We don't talk about the cost because it's hard to. We don't track that cost. People going through it's usually on people are dedicated on their straight time. It's not on overtime. Some instructors will be on overtime, so it's hard to come up with a set cost to how much the school that we put on. And then impacts, we got deliberate misuse. We talk about unintended misuse. And then perception. Wait, go ahead, Jennifer.
Sorry, going back to the training costs, not something that we need to worry about for this week or this month. But for the annual report, being able to capture that personnel cost and the training cost is going to be something to factor in. And so if there's anything that could be updated or modified or changed to support the department in that, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'll talk to Lieutenant Febel after this and see what we can do to start tracking. I just don't think there won't be an exact, but maybe we can come up with something that's a little better, a little bit more accurate. So we talk about the perception of military use in the community. And then we have the impacts on unintended persons. Anytime flashbangs are being deployed, could affect persons that are not intended to be affected. At close range, the intensity of the sound of the flashbang could be enough to cause permanent hearing damage. However, it is possible, the possibility exists that the remedied by improvements to the policy training at least once per month. So we're trying to not have people be affected by these flashbangs through our training and our policy. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Same thing for this part. Can that get changed from unintended persons to impacted persons? Just because it might be intended and the harm might be experienced or injury or permanent disability. The other thing I'm wondering is, given that other agencies' use of flashbangs have led to deaths, if that's something that should be included as a potential impact.
I didn't find any through my Google search. I know that I did ask, and I'll get into let's talk about it at the end.
Yeah, I'll send you a couple links.
Okay.
As long as we're on the impact on persons. Well, we might need a different word for impacted so that we don't have impact on impacted persons. Maybe just impact on persons. There's also vision effects, psychological effects, and startle effects, whichever ones that you want to put in. I think probably the ones that are strictly physical medical are I would prioritize.
Okay.
Probably easier to say. I mean, I'm reading through papers of, it's a very bright object or a very bright item that if you're looking directly into it may cause some will have an effect, possibly lasting, possibly not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got it written down. So mitigations, we talked about our policies. We talked about this before, especially K3, K4, M3 of our complaint investigation process. We do talk about K7, the new military use policy. And then Jennifer.
Sorry, going back to the mitigations. I know you mentioned the I think you said 2008 or 2018 case.
2008.
2008. Are there mitigations that have been taken since then that could be included in this section, just so the department can show what is in place?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'll try to find out.
And one oh, sorry, that's a safeguard. I'll get to it when we get to safeguards.
So we talked about K7 and then the oversight with OMC section 9.65. And then we got the technical safeguards. Every qualified member must complete the inventory log. So every time this equipment is deployed out in the field, they have to do a log and complete the log prior and after the event's over. And so we figure out if there's any missing equipment. The special operations section is responsible for tracking and conducting yearly audits on this inventory. It just talks about special operations. They'll track everything, and that's what they're doing now. Every time there's any deployments out in the field, it gets a notification, goes to this special operations section.
So when I think of this section, I think of what technical aspects of this particular device make it so that there are not mitigate the potential for unintended damage or unintended deployment. And so I noticed that earlier there was a description about a safety release or safety lever. That might be something that goes into the technical safeguards to prevent accidental use or use only when intended. To that same idea for procedural safeguards, it makes sense to me to detail the procedure that the tactical operations team or the SWAT team uses in their, pre-operation to surveillance, figuring out who lives there, figuring out the dimensions, doing, I'm sure, extraordinary amounts of planning to make a determination whether the device can be used safely in their operation. And that seems to me a procedural safeguard, or at least one that's built into the training. Jennifer?
The other procedural safeguards I heard, as you were explaining the process to us, one is the checking if the label doesn't, if the label's worn off. So that's a procedural safeguard. Another one was talking about the training and the visual inspection. That sounded like another procedural safeguard to me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Talk about alternatives. We always talk about de-escalation as part of our policy about K3, our use of force. We always try to use other avenues instead of going to this equipment. The location, it's going to be in the city of Oakland, where we have jurisdiction to use it. Track record, this is where I'm going to talk about the case in October 31. 2008, the Oakland Police Department SWAT team conducted an operation on Douglas Avenue. The SWAT team had been called out because people believed in the people in the home were gang members armed with guns. 2 shotguns and cocaine and heroin were found during the search. A flashbang grenade that an officer deployed in the hallway hit the wall and bounced back into the living room where a subject was sleeping, burning her and her chest and legs. The city of Oakland did settle out for this as a lawsuit for $1.2 million. That was the only incident. I contacted the city attorney. This is the only incident that's taken place in the last 10 years. It was settled in 2010.
This is super small. I'm wondering if subject is the right noun to use for the subject was sleeping. Like, is that where a resident was sleeping? Where?
I will try to find out.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? I know I have a lot to work on here and to improve this. Yes,
Jennifer?
Jennifer?
I'll send you the two articles I was reading about flashbang deployments. And one thing that struck me was the amount of very painful injury and sometimes death that can happen with flashbang use. And one thing I'm wondering is if there is going to be any space in the impact report to kind of look at the impact of flashbangs through that lens and talk about what the department's practices and use policies do to make it less likely for the department to experience those kind of situations. And if that's something I can help you with in the next couple of days, definitely reach out.
I'll definitely be reaching. Okay. I think you're up, DQ.
Robots and poll cameras. No one talks about the poll cameras, but we know that.
Let's see. All right. That's the impact report. Hold on. I think this is the impact report, right? Hold on, sorry. I purposely took off my Joe Turner screensaver so nobody would see it. Hold on. Am I blind? Is it here? Here we go. Sorry. All right. Can everybody see this? Perfect.
We see the impact report.
Oh, what about now? Do you
Impact
see?
report.
Oh, really? Still? Okay. Hold on. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it on my end. Hold on.
Try stopping your share first
Yeah,
and then sharing the policy.
let's see. Let me close out these windows, make it easier on my laptop. All right, let's see if this works now. Should only be one screen. All right, how about now? Perfect. All right, awesome. I think it was a pretty good conversation we had on Friday night. A couple things that came up. Let me see if I can scroll down, sorry. Sorry, I'm working on a different laptop that I normally don't work on, so. All right, so scrolling down, one of the things that we had discussed was including the exigent circumstances, which I had on my unmanned aerial system one. So I kind of copied it just directly from there. Probably just have to work on, I think this was one of the things we had discussed on Friday night, which is totally fine. Then moving down was obviously the detachable tools and things we had discussed, and we wanted to make it a little bit more clear and try to figure out reasons why we would use them, circumstances why we would use them, and such. So I kind of came up with a little bit different, kind of cleaned it up a little bit. I don't know if it's a little bit more confusing or not. What I didn't want was to have shalls and shall nots in this is the only time we use them. There's a lot of circumstances we run into, such as when the community member spoke up and said, hey, you know, there was an incident that happened. That I can say that was the first time we actually grabbed a gun from a person. So what is that going to present, or is that situation going to present it to ourselves again? Absolutely. But I think that's what we have to prepare for. And I think that's kind of what I put in here, a couple little things here. So the first thing I did was discuss that there's different attachments and the 4 different attachments here, and we can word it differently if we want to. But one was obviously the telescoping camera with the rotating robotic claw. The other thing is the detachable OC canister, the detachable glass enter tire puncture, and the pan disruptor. So what I did was I described, obviously I said what the 4 were, and then I went into a little bit more detail here. So we have the 360-degree rotating robotic claw, and I went into a little detail saying kind of what it does and instances when we can use it. So the rotating robotic arm can be utilized to deliver packages or items such as food, water, telephone, etc. And it can also be used to open vehicle or structure doors. Also said that we can also move things. And I went on to describe, and I said this for each incident, was that extreme caution and only through the direction of the command. I think I meant commander. Should the robotic arm be utilized? I went a little bit detailed more, saying that the authorizing commander shall evaluate each scenario and coordinate with the ESU operator, and that the ESU operator shall not be criticized nor disciplined if they pretty much say, you know what, I can't safely do this. I don't feel comfortable doing this. Because I think one of the things we're having, obviously, is you have sometimes officers who think just because I'm giving a direct command from a commander, but I'm the UAV operator, or I'm the expert, or I'm the SME in this, I can tell you whether or not I can safely do this, or if I don't have the proper training for this. So I wanted to add on here that a commander has to give the direction and the order to do it, but that the ESU operator can opt out of it by saying, you know what, I don't actually feel safe that we can physically and capable of doing this. So that's specifically for the robotic arm here. And I went in to describe specifically here too on this one. I think I spoke about right here. Only to the direction of the commander should the robotic arm be utilized to pick up firearms or suspicious packages, which are believed to be explosives. The authorizing commander shall evaluate each scenario, and then the operator should not be criticized nor disciplined for advising that they are incapable of safely and successfully picking up or moving the firearms or suspicious packages. So that's just for the robotic arm. How do we feel about that? If not, I can move forward to the other ones and we can kind of go over all of them. I went over.
Jennifer.
Oh, I didn't see her. Jennifer, you got a question? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm wondering, are there, and I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to look at this policy in the last 2 hours. Are there authorized uses for these attachable weapons?
I think that's what, so the robotic arm is not necessarily a weapon. It is a piece of equipment or tool or an accessory that we utilize to open doors, whether it's a vehicle door or a door inside a house or an exterior door leading into a house. It's a tool where we can pick up a drop phone. We can deliver a cell phone. Like I've said before, we delivered pizzas, water bottles, cigarettes. I forgot, I think we even delivered maybe a sweater or a blanket. So it's not necessarily a weapon on this. So the authorized uses always fall under our authorized uses that we already have, and we wouldn't be deploying them if it wasn't under an authorized use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the explanation.
So then I went into detachable OC canister, and I explained how it's controlled through the remote controller. And I wanted to explain that it could be deployed when a commander or command believes that the usage is in accordance with obviously our policy, procedure, and law, and that such usages place officers in a tactical advantage. And if we need to be a little bit more clear here, we totally can. But what I was trying to say was that we're not just randomly just using this. If I can walk up to the person and safely deploy OC because I was on a walking stop or because I engaged in a physical fight with somebody, then I wouldn't be deploying this robot. Obviously, we're deploying the robots because it gives us either a tactical advantage from a safe location, whether it's concealment or cover, or because we're deploying it during a critical incident or a pre-planned operation. So what I was trying to say on this was that it gives us, even though we're doing it with the policy, procedure, and law, it's also giving us the tactical advantage. So it's not putting the officers in harm's way. Does that make sense for everybody?
So let me see if I can sort of rephrase it in a way that makes sense to me. You have your normal ground floor for authorized use of a robot, right? That's up above in the section. And so when we're thinking about the OC canister, it both has to, there's two additional things. One is satisfying K3 and use of force as an intermediate level of force. And the second is the consideration that it has to place officers in a tactical advantage. And I assume that someone's going to have to say what that tactical advantage is, or should be able to state what that tactical advantage is.
That'd be the command. That'd be, I think if you look at the incident where we had initially too, with the person who was barricaded inside his vehicle with the weapon, with the firearm, right? Us being behind cover and concealment would put us at the tactical advantage if we can just deploy the robot and not put officers in harm's way.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that though, if that is the second level, then that should perhaps be documented somewhere. Because if you're going to use the OC spray, there's a level of documentation that's the use of force, right? And that, but this is not, but the way you have it here is it's satisfying that use of force, but also what the tactical advantage is. So somewhere, someone needs to say or be able to state or write down somewhere what that tactical advantage was that caused you to put the attachment onto the robot.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so you just need to say what that is. And I think that makes a lot of sense if we're considering it from the baseline of first, there's this minimum level of authorized use. Then we have the additional two steps.
The next section I kind of obviously went to discuss our K3 use of force. And then obviously, as we discussed last time, Jesse, referring back to our training bulletin of the VF2 use of OC. So I kind of explained that, saying that the minimal amount of force, and obviously that we're not using them in demonstrations or crowd situations or civil disorders without the approval of supervisor commander. I don't see us deploying it really with a robot in that situation. I'm not saying that would never happen, but I just don't see us doing it. But I pretty much went over and just kind of copied the section from OC and for deployment on there. For detachable glass or tire puncture, basically that's what it is. It can deflate or immobilize tires and or shatter vehicle or structural glass. And again, I went on to say that extreme caution only to the direction of the command should the glass or tire puncture accessory be utilized. And again, the commander has to coordinate with the ESU operator, and the ESU operator can't be criticized for saying, no, I'm incapable or I don't feel safe to successfully do this. The detachable pan disruptor is basically just a shotgun round, water blaster to breach locks, doors, disrupt suspicious packages. I think I forgot to keep extreme caution only to the direction of the commander. Kind of the same thing that I went in line with the other scenarios of that it has to be the direction of the commander to do this.
Jennifer?
Would it be possible to hear or see that definition of barricaded suspect?
It's in your
The
email.
answer is, and if the answer, oh, okay. Thank you.
And that was mainly it for the robots. I believe, let me just go up, down, check. I think that's what last time we discussed were the main things. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thanks. I'm thinking about the locked car scenario. And wondering, is every locked car a barricaded situation? How would this how could this policy intersect with people who are in a locked car, awake or asleep? And also how that would intersect with our unhoused and sleeping in cars population?
I think it depends on the type of call for service. And it depends on the type of crime we have. If I have an incident where I pull you over and you're refusing to roll down your window for me to give you a ticket, 148, I think we can all agree we're not deploying our drone. It's not considered a barricaded suspect here. This is a person who's in violation of resisting either 148 or 69 PC, doesn't want to sign a ticket. I completely identify this person. I can probably mail you the ticket after, or we can write an arrest warrant for you. These are situations where I think at one point we're probably averaging anywhere between 1 to 2 people, unfortunately, fall asleep at the wheel or unconscious at the wheel with an AK-47 on their lap, a firearm on their lap, a firearm next to them on the seat, or even we've had where people call in and they see a holster on the person's waistband, and we don't end up finding a firearm, but a holster, obviously, what's a holster for? A firearm. So these are mainly for people who are barricaded incidents, and depending on the type of crime and the severity of crime, that's what we're looking at, barricaded. I'm not looking at minor crimes, minor incidents, where someone did a petty theft from Walgreens. I'm pulling you over and someone stole $40 of makeup or $40 worth of Red Bull. We're not going to be breaking out your windows, us making KTVU news for $40 worth of Red Bull. Now, when someone calls us and says, hey, someone's blocking my driveway, I walked up and looked inside and he has a large rifle on his lap, that's where we're looking at situations like this.
Got it. So a barricaded subject by definition has a firearm.
Not necessarily. I mean, you can have a knife. It can also be a person who was wanted for murder. It could be also someone who was wanted for domestic battery, and I can't leave. I have to be at this situation. It's a mandatory arrest. It could also be someone who has a hostage in their car. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a firearm. I think it depends on the severity of the crime and everything. And I don't know if we have the exact definition, Joe, from one of the training bulletins. I don't know if you sent it already to Jennifer, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a person with a firearm.
Yeah, it says weapon, explosive, or other dangerous device. And also seizes control of a location and refuses to surrender. Okay. So I see what you're doing here, and it makes a lot of sense. It sort of describes the capabilities of these particular tools and describing their use and sort of kind of implying that these are the uses for them for each one. How does the ad hoc feel about this sort of this delineation?
I would personally feel a little bit more comfortable if there was a little bit more explicit language around the how authorized use may or may not change with weapons, and also what other policies should be referred to in deploying attachable weapons. Basically, I'm wondering, at what point does it become standard practice to always attach the tire slasher, always attach the OC spray? And what, yeah, that's basically it.
So since we have 4 different things and only, I suppose the robotic arm could technically be a weapon, but it hasn't really been described as much. And the main reason we're going through this has been for the tire puncture, the OC spray, and the pan disruptor. Does that make sense? We're really looking at those 3 things. I see nods of that. Okay. Okay. And then I share that mainly because I can tell with the OC spray because you have sort of intermediate level of force, which means that there's some sort of resistance. I can also tell that there's, this additional requirement of a tactical advantage, but I don't see the same for detachable glass or tire puncture, and I don't see the same for detachable pan disruptor. Can you tell us a little bit more about, I don't know, when you envision using, let's start with the pan disruptor, because that's, I think, a little bit more specific and we've talked less about it.
Yeah. I think a couple situations. There's been multiple times where we've had to come up to a iron gate and had to use bolt cutters. I see us using bolt cutters all the time. Now, different situation here. We had an incident on, I believe it was on Elizabeth, maybe about 1.5 years ago, where officers responded to the scene. It was 4:15, like disturbance gunshots as officers are driving down the street. They see gunshots inside the house, and then a guy sticks out a rifle and starts shooting at officers. More officers arrive at scene, a guy sticking out a rifle, and now officers are taking rounds while they're hiding behind a car. So the guy has an obvious tactical advantage over the officers with a more high-powered rifle, firearm, and also at an elevated position. So I immediately responded to that location and requested officers, respond with the emergency response vehicle and with the Bearcat emergency response vehicle and the armored SUV, just to utilize cover, concealment, and give us protection. So these are situations where, hey, I can't safely get to that door. The only way I can do is with a shield. Well, walking with a shield with a guy pointing a rifle at me is probably not the best situation. At what point, if I need to breach that door, can I not just have the robot come up, point at the door, breach the door, and now the door is open? I can use a robot to push the door open. And now if we need to immediately gain entry, we can immediately run inside. That's one situation. Another situation is if you have, again, like a lock gate and you want to come up and breach it, you totally can. We've always used bolt cutters. We've never used this type of breaching tool for a locked gate, but it's still a possibility. Suspicious package, we'll always call Alameda County Sheriff's Office because they are the bomb experts. We are not. But there could be a possibility where they respond to the scene. We're out there. They don't have the capability of utilizing any type of device to destroy this package, and they ask us to do it for them. So that's another situation.
So the pan disruptor is used for breaching doors or blowing up packages that it would not be safe for an officer to go up and do themselves.
Correct. Again, in line within the policy procedure, but also giving us that tactical advantage at a safe location.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just say that? Sorry, Jennifer.
Oh.
All right, this is just going to be a dumb question. Wouldn't the robot always provide a tactical advantage? Like, why not use it all the time? Like, wouldn't that always be the tactical advantage situation?
And when Jesse was bringing that up, I was thinking about that. That's why we're already using it. So I can always leave that out. I think it's because it's already implied that we have the robot out there, that we'd have the tactical advantage. So we can leave that out because it would imply that the reason why I have it out there is to have the tactical advantage.
Oh, I mean, if you're using something like the pan the pan disruptor, and the reason you're using it is because it's a tactical advantage, wouldn't it always be a tactical advantage? Like, under what situation would it not be a tactical advantage to use the pan disruptor?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, there's been multiple times when we've been able to surround and call out. People come to the door, so I don't need to obviously go and breach the door. There's been other times where we do a surround and call out based on information that we have and based on the intelligence we have. We either know that maybe nobody's in there, but the door is fortified, so we'll use a key, meaning we use a little ram, we'll open the door. So I don't see us always bringing out the robot to bypass a lock when we don't need to, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Is it possible to capture any of that in this policy?
Such as when I would use it as opposed to using like what we call a hook and a key, like a tool, like to walk up physically.
Yeah, well, okay, so here's what I'm thinking as I'm reading this. It looks like there's basically very few situations in which you couldn't use the robot. And so why is it possible for you to describe some of the situations in which the robot would not get used? Just to give people a little bit more context for, we're not going to use it just because, you know, it's kind of fun to drive around and use. These are situations in which we might use other tools because they're the right tools for the job.
Like, actually, it's a pain in the butt doing it.
Okay, all right.
So like, it'd be like, no, we don't need to use it. It takes so long to set up. I see what you're saying. I'm just trying to, what I don't want to do is put examples or situations where it locks us in saying, well, it didn't meet this criteria.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. What I'm thinking about is it possible to give more context to the public, but not necessarily in through the lens of authorized or prohibited use?
So DQ, potentially you could just say something like, as using the robot as a layer of complexity and additional sort of trained, trained officers to any sort of situation or engagement. The robot is, not always the appropriate tool, only when it is necessary to provide a tactical advantage. I think that is, I agree, kind of implied, but it feels like, we could just say like, yeah, it's not, you're not just using the tool just because it is available. And I can think of a lot of situations in which it would actually be a hindrance,
Yeah.
And so you wouldn't use it, but we don't need to illustrate necessarily all those reasons why. I think it's enough to just say, it is a complex piece of machinery that requires a lot of additional sort of logistics to utilize. So it's not always going to be only when it's necessary. Does that work for you, Jennifer?
Yeah, that sounds. I think any effort to add a little bit of context would be helpful.
Okay, I like it.
Do you have that paragraph and know where to put it?
When I wrote it down, I'm gonna go with the one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit when we talked about the tactical advantage for each one, but I was gonna go with at the very end of the pan disruptor, talking about it below. unless we want it above here. I think we discuss it after the attachments.
It strikes me that you might want it in authorized use and as one of the first paragraphs in authorized use, since it does talk about deployments generally,
Okay.
and having the robots out is a pain in the pain in the A.
It is sometimes. So we're talking about maybe under authorized use down, maybe after exigent circumstances, as maybe number 3 to explain it.
Who's is the lieutenant or above who authorizes it, the ESU supervisor or someone else?
Well, I'm technically the ESU supervisor, but technically if you have the watch commander on scene, that person, he or she's technically the incident commander, tactical commander, catch-all. So it'd be that person that's authorizing the deployment of such equipment. But if you have a blue alert, you'd have the incident commander there with the tactical commander. And it'd be the tactical commander authorizing it, and then the incident commander approving it as well.
The reason why I say it is there's this portion here on deployment authorization, which strikes me as a place where you might want to talk about it, but I think other people should weigh in.
Oh, that actually wouldn't be a bad spot to have it in there too, but
Because it's, I think that I'd want other people to weigh in because it's sort of the context informs the use, maybe not necessarily the deployment authorization, but
Yeah. Could you drop in some filler text just so I can sort of see what it looks like? It's hard for me to think about it without seeing it.
we're saying maybe here, where we'd say, I know we talked about, we're just gonna
And
go,
you could make something up too, if that would be helpful.
in considering deployment of the robots or pole cameras, incident commanders should consider that the robots are highly specialized and technical pieces of equipment that take a lot to set up and should only request deployment when absolutely necessary. Something like that.
Or, and should first consider alternatives that may be better suited.
I like
Yeah.
both of those.
Yeah, so I do note, and this is an interesting sort of thought experiment too that does come up, is because we have noted, right, that the department, our main goal is obviously to preserve life, and that is the officers, the community, and that person who we are engaging. And this sometimes does come and run up into some of these things that we talk about. So for instance, if there were to be a tactical team call out or just an incident, then, and the robot is not used, then questions will come up. How come, such and such item was not used? How come we didn't do X, Y, or Z? So, understanding, and this is where, and I think it's not necessarily anything that we're doing wrong here. In fact, I think this is good, but this does show, this tends to show those sort of balancing acts that come into these type of things. It's both the practical things, like we heard DQ say, hey, yeah, it's kind of a pain in the rear end to get that thing out of there. And also some of the other things about, worries about militarization. The privacy committee will talk about privacy, but then, occasionally, and I think it's important for us to get this on the record, is that there will be times when these items are not used and we make legitimate, good faith decisions not to use them in accordance with the policy, and things will go wrong. And that is, I think, an understanding that we do have to have. So we want to try, and I think that is one of the things where you hear a little bit of the reticence from the department, because we do tend to try and exhaust as many options as possible when it comes to the service of trying to make sure that we resolve an incident peacefully.
Erickson.
Hello, everyone. When it comes to that, and thank you for that explanation. One of the things that comes to mind is, during a deployment, are you immediately making the decision to, as you're setting it up and have it ready to go, wouldn't your safeguard be using the original tool, which is the claw arm, just, or even like a camera, right, to get a position or see what's the situation, and is that a safeguard comparing to like is there like oh, we're immediately going to use the OC canister once we have it set it up, or are there steps to see like what will determine what equipment to use, and part of the safeguard is using the original tool? I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but what I'm trying to say is that from using the other tools, which are more military advantage, and what you got to set it up, right? Like, what is the step-by-step to say, all right, we got the equipment, we set it up, it took that much time, then boom, we're gonna use the camera or the claw to determine the situation, return it back, and then we're gonna attach an OC canister, and what are those decisions that, I don't know, I just want to get walked through.
No, I think that's an excellent question. I think every situation is a little different, but the main thing we have, if we talk about barricaded or critical incident with somebody who's barricaded inside a house who doesn't want to come out, it's always, isolation, containment, negotiation. Negotiate, time's on our side. However, it really changes if it becomes an active shooter. It really changes if you have a hostage situation. We still have the isolation, containment, and negotiate, and we have all these resources available to us to see what do we really want to use. Also, what are we going to use that's not going to change the situation or make the person react differently? So, and that is why we take into an account everything, and we don't just have just snipers and entry team. We have our hostage negotiators teams. We have our electronic service operators there. But I think one of the biggest things too is we take into account of, let's make sure we call our mental health crisis unit out there. Do we have any information? Because when we think about our hostage negotiating team, it's not that they're just actively negotiating with somebody. They're actively doing research on that house and actively doing research on that person to see, have we ever contacted that person? So I think it really, really depends on the type of situation. And I think that's why I always like to say it's not an end all be all list, because law enforcement is one of those jobs we go into work and we never know what we're going to be dealt with. We can look at a situation and I can look at a critical incident. And I've been in a lot of barricaded suspect incidents as a tactical commander. And I can say, you know what? This didn't work very well with us last time we did this, but oh my gosh, this worked very well. We just asked him to come out and he came out. Wow, that was easy. As opposed to another one, we're going to negotiate for 2-3 hours. There's no set time frame. Obviously, I'm not saying we're going to be there for 4 days, but then there's also other things, right? Tactical disengagement. Do we really need to arrest this person right now? Do we really need to use force in there? So I think Joe Turner brings up a great point of, we do ask for a lot of resources because we always want to be ahead of the game, and it's easier to have the resources there than try to wait for it to get here. So if at any time we do have a barricaded incident, yeah, absolutely, we're going to be able to, have a robot or drone or something give us real-time intelligence. But we also have to figure out, if I deploy this resource, am I going to jeopardize the safety of the people inside or make this person act differently too? Because if I have constant communication with the person, I might not have a robot go inside. I might not have a drone fly by a window because I'm having a current constant engagement with the person. So it's a really excellent question, Eric, but it's kind of just case by case. I think, Jennifer, you have a question? And I hope I answered your question, Eric.
Yeah, thank you for walking me through.
Thanks. So I'm thinking about what Joe Turner was just saying about the balance, and that's making me wonder if the goal is to provide the public with more context, if maybe what we want to do is this blue text that you've got here, change that language from being a directive to be more informational, and then moving it up towards either purpose or how the system works. And so it could be rephrased like the robot or the pole camera is not always the best tool for the job. And something about alternatives are considered, alternatives to these tools are considered prior to deployment. I'm wondering what the rest of the ad hoc thinks of that for placement and shift in tone.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, it is more philosophical thought about moving that. And yeah, especially since we're talking about a tool, right? Our main, it seems like a lot of our balancing act is around resource use and the sort of continued reliance on these items which are controlled versus, sort of more traditional methods. So yeah, I think having that as something there a little further up, kind of talking about that might be better.
Super small DQ, can you change it from should always be to are always considered? Just to make it a little bit more informational rather than directive.
Say that one more time, Jennifer, sorry.
And alternatives are always considered prior to deployment.
And then I would add in the area where the system how the system works to robots, that the robots require some amount of time to set up and to be used. It would be, I think, under or part of paragraph 1. Because someone has to get the robot, take it to the scene, and then set it up.
You're looking under section 1 right here?
Right. To demonstrate the, maybe not the pain in the A part, but the time commitment and the use. Yeah.
I'm just probably not needed to add, but I'm personally curious, is this like a 5-minute setup or like an hour setup?
You know what, it really depends. I can literally grab the robot. So one of the things now that I have our unmanned aerial vehicle, the operators doing, is that they always have the drone in their caged vehicle. And I'm asking them to also have a robot in there and a pole camera. And I say this because if you look at the impact report later, the amount of deployments we're using it's now it's like we used to be the punting team. Now we're the superstars for everyone. Everybody wants us, right? It was always you kind of need a decent kicker, right? But now you want the quarterback. So that's what we've turned into, and it's a game changer. It's a true game changer. But it's benefited the department, I think everybody greatly on this. So one of the things I have is if you're going out there just with a drone, don't go out there just with a drone, have the accessibility of having the robot and pole camera there, because the problem I have is it's going to cost us time to drive back. So
sorry, sorry to jump in. Just like context, like range of time for robot setup.
if I grab and put the battery, it takes 30 seconds. If I'm putting the robotic arm, it can take about 3 minutes. And if I'm putting the pan disruptor with the water, I need somebody else there, it can take about 10 minutes or longer, maybe 15
Okay.
minutes.
Cool, thanks.
So mindful of time, and then we have 2 more policies to think about. With regard to the changes that have been made, both informational as well as some additional scenarios and situations where the department anticipates use of these additional attachments. How does the ad hoc feel about the state of this policy and its presentation to the commission?
I would personally appreciate the opportunity to read this a little bit more leisurely. And so if we can make some time Wednesday to maybe not revisit, but just check in on if anyone had additional discussion, I would appreciate that opportunity. Not promising to take it up though.
Others?
I
You're on
agree.
mute.
I'm on mute. I would agree. I think I'd like to read it with the new changes in its totality in order to make a better informed decision. But I do appreciate, like, Lieutenant DQ, this is a lot of work, so it is much appreciated, and I appreciate your diligence and like adjusting and accommodating all of our questions and comments.
Perfect.
Very much so. I see that there are also changes to the impact reports.
Yeah.
But I see that they are, well, let's take those offline and have everyone get through them and then submit comments if they can, maybe by tomorrow.
Are you talking about for the impact reports?
Right, for robots and pole cameras impact reports.
Okay.
Jennifer?
Would it be possible to get the changes from tonight emailed tonight or first thing tomorrow?
I can do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, thanks.
Great. Let's turn to drones. If we can. Hoping to do this today. No pressure though.
All right, let's see. Let me share the screen with you. All right, you can see that? Perfect.
Yes.
Let's see, scrolling down. I think the big, go ahead, sorry.
Surveillance.
Yeah. I think that was the only thing. Oops, I think it stopped sharing. I think the biggest thing was the surveillance portion. So I didn't know how to word it on here, but it was conducting surveillance not related to an authorized operation such as described in General Guidelines 3A. I left it pretty vague since we had already described it, saying that if it was a pre-planned operation, which I haven't done before, we usually do officers just going out there physically, but it is available to us. I described it such as just simple.
Do we
Is
have,
three,
general-
sorry, go ahead.
oh, do we have the general guidelines available,
Oh, yeah.
readily available? I don't want to make you.
No, it's right there. It's just right
Okay.
here. Authorized-
Oh, okay, above. Okay, great.
It's the authorized uses right here.
For the operational pre-planning, can that be conducted without a warrant yet issued?
Yes.
I think that's the issue. So when I think of concerns of surveillance, I think about information gathering that might lead towards investigations or arrest or search warrants, right? Or watching. I think of sometimes in San Francisco, they do these things called spotting operations where they're sitting in a high building with binoculars and they just sit there watching. Or the use of surveillance video or live surveillance video feeds to just watch people. And I think that sort of is where the concern of surveillance comes from. I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but I'm saying like that is where the concern comes from. I see here that it talks about the operational pre-planning that you have here in section 3I V, Roman numeral V, doesn't say investigation for search warrants and arrest warrants. It just says prior planning for service.
Correct.
That means to me that you've already gotten your warrant. What portion of this authorized use would be the surveillance or intelligence gathering specifically for warrants?
So yes and no, because there are times where maybe a search warrant isn't signed until midnight or isn't signed until 8 p.m. the night before the operation. So this is, again, have we done this? No. I always say, look at Google Maps. When was Google Maps printed out? Or was it September? Just use that one. I don't think I'm going to get anything differently. Did you go someone drive out there? Did Argus? Well, maybe Argus is unavailable to drive by. So sometimes on these situations is, hey, can you fly a drone out there just so we can get an aerial view of the back, just so we know what we're getting involved into. So I know where officers can place themselves in the rear perimeter prior to our deployment, prior to our service. Go ahead, Joe.
Thanks. Yeah. So, yeah, and I think this is what Commissioner Howell was kind of alluding to as well, the same thing. So it doesn't sound like if we're thinking about serving a search warrant at Joe Turner's house, it doesn't matter whether we have the search warrant or not. But we're not going to use the drone, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're not going to use the drone to get more information on like Joe Turner's patterns of movement or on his illegal activity. We might use it to get more information on things like, what does the backyard look like for entry? Or how do we what the color of the house is to describe it in the affidavit? Or how many people are going in and out so we know the best time to serve it when Joe Turner's likely there, but his whole family is likely not. Things like that. Is that an accurate?
I'd say the first two, not the last one.
Okay. So we may not even, so in terms of like the human being and their activities is not really what we're looking at.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the layout of the location for officers. But again, like I said, we haven't ever deployed it this year at all for that. Neither has ACSO. It's always, we try to get everything else, but I don't want to leave that as an option that we can't use in case we need it.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So Commissioner Shea, I think what both you and Commissioner Howell are kind of it sounds like is active surveillance. Like, hey, let's watch this area or this this person to see their activities. It sounds like that is not happening, but I'm not super confident in my ability or our ability to put that into words necessarily. Even though it sounds like we're all kind of saying the same thing and that is not the intended use and not happening.
Jennifer?
I have a suggestion that I hope will help since the situation isn't happening. Could we add a reporting requirement for when the drones are used without an active warrant, including time between the use and when the warrant was issued, or if the warrant was not issued?
It would be a reporting requirement to who?
Probably, yeah, that's a good question. I'll defer to the commissioners on this one and whether it should go prior, promptly or with the annual report.
Because we do all reporting, like everything gets logged in within the day. So I have everything up to date with locations, reasons why deployment, what did you do, what did you see, who deployed it, who was the lieutenant that authorized it, and I have a running spreadsheet.
I'm inclined to take the department at its word and leave it for the annual report, but ask that they track that data.
Yeah.
Specifically, that's my sense. I take the department at its word. You're not using it, you don't plan on using it, you don't plan on doing it. The reporting and the data should bear out. Which means that to the extent you are tracking, well, I'm trying to figure out what section it would fall under.
Section H for reporting, maybe?
No, I mean, what section of authorized use it would fall under, or how it might be described.
Pre-planning, I think, because I have drop-down menus for all these in my teams, so that when people deploy, they just drop down the menu and say sideshow, and then they have a narrative. Like I actually had one exigency, and one was there was a vehicle collision where people got ejected from a vehicle on 580 and we couldn't find people. So the commanders called me. I said, yeah, go out there and see if you can find any people who are injured. So they're actually flying to the bushes trying to find out if anybody had been injured and if we were missing anybody in the bushes.
Here's what I would do. Because your prohibited use states, here's my suggestion. Because your prohibited use states UAS shall not be used for the following activities, and it specifically says conducting surveillance not related to an authorized operation. I would have as an additional call out for reporting anytime the UAS is used for conducting surveillance related to an operation. Does that make, I think that would cover both pre-planned, we would see pre-planned, but also active surveillance if it were to occur, because that would have to be part of an operation.
So you're saying have section 4 here?
No, in section 8, I would suggest, at Jennifer's suggestion, section H, reporting. Sorry, it is in
Way at the bottom.
Roman numeral 5, section H.
Uh-huh.
Reporting. The annual report will also include any, well, specifically detail any surveillance conducted using the UAS pursuant to an authorized operation.
Do you want to specify what level of detail that should be? Or give some guidance on what that looks like?
Utilizing an authorized operation.
Conducted utilizing a specific to an operation.
I'll take, I would like some suggestions as to what might go or what concerns people may have that could be captured by some sort of reporting requirement.
Do you want
So-
to include any surveillance? Because it just seems that we don't conduct surveillance. I always like to stay away from the word surveillance. Because
I know
we don't-
that-
and that's just me personally. And I don't like it only because that's why, like I said, our ESU is electronic services unit, not surveillance unit. I just don't like the word surveillance. That scares people. I think we'll be in trouble with that right there, unfortunately.
So I
That's
mean,
my
the sentence of the final sentence of H here is very close to what we're coming up with. Summary of authorized access and use. You could just add into that sentence, sort of enumerating the things that are, that are specifically, or at least a reasonable amount of things, without sort of having to sort of include a whole bullet point. That just so that it is a little more specific to, I mean, what are we calling this if we're not calling it surveillance? Are we calling it information gathering? Because that seems to be what your intelligence gathering.
Yeah.
Like you could just add a piece of language to that final sentence there without adding a whole nother section.
I see what you're saying.
It feels like it's repetitive. I mean, I know that this is just sort of wordsmithing on the fly, and but
What is
it feels
the,
like the idea can go there.
Jennifer?
You asked earlier about what would go in. I would be interested in seeing more details about operational pre-planning with and without warrants. The number of times these were deployed without a warrant, prior to a warrant. I know Mr. Maya had some suggestions on Friday about, or not suggestions, but thoughts on Friday about location, and was concerned that surveillance or deployments that might look like surveillance might be unevenly distributed across the city.
So the answer would be 0. Alameda County Sheriff's Office, we haven't even used them for, oh, sorry.
That'll make your reporting super easy.
Are we trying too hard? Could we just put in that you're not doing active surveillance and prohibited use?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, how long are you keeping the surveillance videos? I think that would just ease up. Like, during the sideshow, boom, you keep it for 5 days, right? Or what is that? Does
Well,
it capture?
For sideshow, we'd be keeping it later, a lot longer, because it's criminal activity. That would fall under the not deleting it within the 5 days. But for this one right here, conducting a surveillance not related to, we said we can just make it easier here and just write a single sentence, you think, somewhere?
And when it comes to, like, because other cities are requesting the service as it came up with immigration, and providing this info to immigration, even if it's not in Oakland, just outside cities, would you see that being an issue in the future?
No, it's a great
If
question.
not being used right now?
I think we have our section of, what is it, 13.515, that says that we shall not provide immigration or U.S. Customs any information or anything. The only thing we can do in a system is if they're requesting some type of emergency rescue assistance and they're calling for what we call like code 3 cover, like I need immediate assistance because we're being shot at. But other than that, we don't provide them with any information.
Yeah, I think that's good information to have in this, the prohibiting ICE and immigration.
How about we just rephrase B to, we will not be conducting, like you said, any surveillance.
So if you delete
Or you-
from conducting surveillance after that to, from that to the end,
conducting surveillance.
Yeah, because well, let's think about this. The phrase is active surveillance that we're worried about. Active surveillance has a very particular meaning to the department. That means you're watching people. That means you're watching their goings and their activities.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, we are not, I think part of this is because we're not like SFPD and that we just don't have a bunch of people to hang around watching people all day. Yeah, I know, it is kind of strange, yeah, but you know, and we do have to future-proof these a little bit, right? Into thinking like, hey, you know, Oakland police, who knows, right? At some point, maybe we have 1,200 officers and we do have people to sort of, you know, sit with binoculars somewhere eating sandwiches or whatever it is that San Francisco police is doing. But yeah, at this point, that's not something we're doing. When we're doing you know, surveillance, it is, you know, very specific operation that is normally around you know, undercover officers or plainclothes officers who are looking at things. And that, it sounds like from what DQ was saying, is not at all what we are using the drone for, and actually is a pretty poor use of the drone considering the battery time last. So
Yeah, I like that. But I think the other thing, it comes with like the surveillance of groups of people, you know, like I remember back in the day, like gangs, you know, y'all, or even just being spotting, you know, and now that you have this equipment, and youth, you know, like, you know, I think just the large group also, you know, but actively surveillance, oh, we're gonna surveillance this group even though they haven't done anything, or you know, but I know like that goes into it, but yeah, I think that's just another frustration, just because you could get surveillance, maybe just because misidentified, or you know, yeah, I think just the gang issue too just comes to mind, and just the criminalization, like, oh, this group of people, all right. Um, yeah.
I think if the department is comfortable with saying that they're not going to be conducting surveillance with the drone, then I think that covers all of those concerns. Surveillance being very different than operational pre-planning, going up and taking a picture of a layout or terrain.
I like it.
agree.
And that negates the need for any additional lines for reporting, I think, which simplifies things a great deal. I won't even try to take up at LRAD at the moment. But perhaps we could take a quick look at the impact report for robots to finish this off for Thursday.
Sure. Robots.
Drone, sorry.
No, sorry.
Drones.
A drone impact robot. Why is my computer so slow? Hold on. There we go. Sorry. All right. Ah, got it.
And let's focus on the parts that you said you added lines, please.
Yep. Oh, come on. All right. Let's see. Scroll down. I change. Oops. Really?
It must be a government issued laptop.
It's an OPD issue, that laptop, yes. Thank you, Jesse, I appreciate it. So I just added I think a table here was a lot easier. It was nice, cleaner. I think this is a government issued laptop. So the one thing I wanted to do was add about estimated anticipated ongoing costs here. And talking about the stuff we have. So I reached out to Alameda County Sheriff's Office since we just started our program this year, and I tried to figure out what they spend average a year based on little wears and tears, replacements, batteries. They spend about I believe it's $10,000 to $15,000 a year, which he gave me about $15,000 here, and they have 60 UAVs. So what I did was I figured out I have 11. They had 228 deployments this year. I have 101 deployments this year. So I kind of did a little bit of a ratio here. And I guesstimated that we probably spend about $2,500 to $3,000 a year on battery replacement, minor wear and tear. So kind of just guesstimated. The other thing is that we do subscribe to an FA 107 deployment. Basically, we get on our cell phone and we're able to communicate with the cell towers and with DC, and it gives us immediate approval to fly or not fly. And we're able to look at the airspace requirements, the weather conditions and everything. It's about $150 to $200 a month, which gives us about $1,800 to $2,400 a year. So I kind of just guesstimated some costs. Scrolling down, I could add a couple more things, but what I did was I looked at our track record and I looked at our deployments. I thought this would be kind of interesting for everybody just to see that in 2021, obviously ACSO deployed 52 times, then it went 43 times ACSO has deployed in our city, and then we've deployed 101 times. And I kind of broke it down with the authorized usages and the number of times that we've deployed to make it kind of clear with what we've done. I can also break it down by geographical areas, which I have, and I had, but I realized I had miscounted and I was going to give you false numbers, so then I erased it. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thanks. I'm looking at the estimated or anticipated costs for each proposed use. And I think when you first introduced this to us, you told us that it required 3 officers to every time a drone is deployed, and that about half the days of the week overtime is involved. That seems like it might be a helpful bit of context to include in the estimated costs section. Any other information you have about the quantity and frequency of deployments would also be really helpful context.
So I have pretty much full coverage throughout the week, except for about 2 times a night. We are losing our dog watch operator, and he's going to be going to a specialized unit. So basically between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. I'm going to have nobody now. So that's where maybe the overtime comes in, or we reach out to outside agencies. Usually if nobody's working right now, we've reached out to outside agencies, so there's really no cost impact to us. But that's something I can totally add on here.
That sounds like an improvement, because last time you were saying that there were several days in the week that overtime was involved.
I got a lot of people trained up. The thing I'm hurting on is that I don't have as many drones, and I just see the wear and tear of these drones, because ACSO has 60. They technically have 100, but 40 are so old that they just use them for training now, and they don't use the 6. They use the main ones for when they're out there, but they use the other ones for training. So they have 101. I have 11, and I just see the wear and tear that it's going to come to a problem where I don't have drones anymore. So I'm trying to figure this out.
Kind of related to that, the estimated or anticipated ongoing costs. I think it's helpful to know that it's about 40 hours per officer per month. Knowing how many officers That is, and if that number will be likely changing, would be helpful context there.
Okay. And this is all for the anticipated cost, correct, on this section?
Estimated or anticipated ongoing costs.
Okay, I can add that on there. That shouldn't be a problem. Going down, I kind of just broke it down, like I said, for deployments, explained what deployments we had. And I didn't go with exact stories. In the robots, I listed 2 specific stories. I can list 2 specific stories if you want here, but these are just circumstances that have assisted us in the deployments of UAVs. So again, like I said, we had one exigency, and it was because we had a major collision and people had been ejected out of vehicles. So I got called out like at 11 p.m. at night, and we're flying drones to see if we can find anybody in the bushes just to hopefully not save an additional life out there. Fortunately, there was nobody else that was out there. So I can list the story if we want, or list 2 stories, or I can just leave it as bullet points. In the robot section, I listed 2 stories. And then the other thing is, I know that it was the areas of concern. I can list the deployment areas too, because I keep track of deployment areas. So if we want to list deployment areas, I provided that to the privacy committee. And I did that before they even asked, and they were very happy about that. So I started doing that before they even thought about it. I keep track of deployment in areas, and also contact with people we've made by race. So again, that was just something kind of like, I was just kind of forecasting that maybe somebody would want that in the future. So before they asked, I already thought about it, and I had my team doing it. So that's something I can include in here too, if we want.
Table or map of that would be amazing.
I'll include it. I shouldn't even offer, Jennifer, but I'll include it.
Okay. I'm going to cut us off because we're at 8:02. Thank you very much for all this great work, everyone. I think we'll take as much as we can. I know it's only about 48 hours or so, but hopefully everyone can take a look at the impact report for robots, as well as taking some time with the robots policy and with LRAD, because didn't see. I think there's still some work to do on the LRAD and some writing to do.
There
Figure
is.
that part out.
Yeah, I don't think there was much more I did with LRAD. There was maybe a couple little things I did, but I think we need to talk as a group on that one, just to clarify what we really want into word choices and what we don't want.
Agreed. We're good. So on Wednesday, we definitely have to take up flashbangs. We definitely have to finish up robots. I don't think we need to bring UAS back. Is the department anticipating mobile command on Wednesday?
Yes, if we have time.
Because that one's a state one, right?
That is a state one. Yeah.
Okay. Then flashbangs, robots for sure to finish. And mobile command vehicles or LRAD will flip a coin. Thank you all so much. See you on what may be our last Wednesday meeting. Cross fingers. We'll see.
Good night.
All right.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Like,